What's wrong? Well, you forgot to start it. Title of this talk is She Forgot to Start It. What shall I do next? Take two. What? That's not pink? Yeah. I lied. It's pink. So I started out using that as some kind of a reason for talking at all. And saying that pink in that beautiful painting up there done by 5-year-olds?
2-year-olds.
2-year-olds. That's why it's so good. Wow, how many were working on it?
What she gets is class, maybe 6.
Yeah, maybe 5.
Were they cooperating?
More like just standing next to each other.
That's cooperating. In this world, that's what it is. No elbows?
No.
Oh, good. So that's not pink. So what I'm pointing there, or endeavoring to talk about, is how we use a label to cover up the very thing we're trying to see. So the very thing that we're endeavoring to work with, we give a name, and we don't realize that when we name something, that even though it has its utilitarian or pragmatic use, we need to name something so you know the difference between a table and a chair and so on. Did a bug just fall on my phone? There it is. So it's not about not naming anything, it's about seeing the activity of a name, what a name does, seeing that naming anything covers up the very thing that you're endeavoring to work with or use or to communicate about. Language, words are cover-ups. Isn't that right, word cloud? That's word cloud back there. I named her a long time ago. Isn't that your name?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was. So, good name for a poet. So it's about extending, stretching, increasing, validating, nurturing the awareness. And what is that? A simple metaphor for that is the space. Anytime you have a room, you have the space in the room. So someone who, I just said something about this morning, or maybe it was this afternoon to someone who is asleep is like a room, but it's like a small room, like a closet or something. Someone who's asleep is closeted everything and is kind of sealed off and maybe has a doorway, but we like to keep everything nice and secure so we're protected. Someone who is awakened, to continue to use metaphors, is like a building, probably a lot bigger than a closet, that all the windows and doors have been blown off. And when the messenger of anger, of passion, aggression, ignorance comes in looking for someone to be angry, that energy cannot find anyone. It doesn't mean that their anger won't arise. It just means it can't locate. It can't fasten on some kind of a person who feels that way. Because if there's a person imputed, implied, created, manifested, imagined, then we're going to have problems, because that person is going to want to get rid of that, or justify that, or explain that, or shut down, or close off, or seal all the doors. And usually when they seal all the doors, they've sealed the anger in with them, which is called what? Repression, whatever names you can give it. So what are we doing here? What are we trying to do? Or what am I trying to promote is let's see what this is. Don't use Buddhism or not. If it helps you as a model or as an example, or the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, then use that. If not, at least don't add. Don't add. You don't need to add anything. You don't need to believe anything. You don't need to disbelieve anything. Believing and disbelieving is just a cheap way of getting a reference point. It's cheap. Why is it cheap? Because it doesn't cost much. Why is it cheap? Because it's low class. It's a low functioning of being a human being. It's quite, not to take anything away from my friends, the animal lovers. There's one. There's another one. How many animal lovers do we have here? I'm an animal lover. I love animals, especially squirrels. One of my favorite animals. What? I don't hate them. I like that. I don't hate them. I'm not. I know you guys love them. Go ahead. Don't you have an animal you like? How about a fly? Is there one? Is there one on my head? Yeah. We're having a conversation right now.
Yeah, I do like chipmunks.
I like chickmunks. There's a chickmunk. She put 2 grapes in her mouth. Have anybody seen that picture yet? Put 2 grapes in her mouth and went like that. It's very cute. They were huge grapes, weren't they? What was I saying? Huh?
You love animals.
I love animals. Huh?
Nothing against the animal lover.
Nothing against animal lovers, yeah. And then what?
And then that's what we got separated. Who's an animal lover?
And then what? Yeah. For one thing, we've been pronouncing wrong. It's actually aminals. It's just misspelled. Somebody screwed it up somewhere. Just like the word pink. It's supposed to be kink. Well, you guys know about that, right? So see how I could actually convince you with my incredible charisma that you've been saying that word all along. I remember the first time I ran into the word confusion was a little friend of mine. He's actually an old man now. I think that was the 6th grade. He had just gone into the 7th grade, and he came back and said, looking like this, I'm like, we've been saying it wrong. Remember that one? And you'll get what this is. It's not really that word. It's actually pronounced different. You've been saying it wrong. And he believed this. It's actually fluck. And I remember thinking, that doesn't sound right. Doesn't sound right. But I listened to him, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt. But I didn't change over. I waited for a while, and I listened to a lot of people say that word. I thought, no, they're probably fooling him. Older 8th graders are probably fooling the new 7th grader. Where was I going with that?
What about Confucian and confusion?
Confucian?
They might be connected.
How about Confucius?
And confusion.
Confusion?
They're very connected.
They are? Say more.
Confucius was confused.
Yeah. That's not pink. And I'm saying that we tend to, as soon as you label anything, you may not turn away from it like obviously, but as soon as you label something, you actually turn away from what you just labeled and you start attaching to the label itself. It's very subtle. Going back to the metaphor of the room or the building, you could also say that someone who is asleep lives in some kind of a tight container. You could call it, in the Shambhala tradition, it's called a cocoon. We have a cocoon, so we're protected from everything with our concepts, our ideas, our opinions. There are opinions over here, opinions over there, right and wrong, conspiracy theories. It's not that there's not a conspiracy, but it's the theories that are the problem. And so the example or the metaphor that Suzuki Roshi, the the Japanese monk who came from, in 1960, I think it was, to the United States to teach in, San Francisco. Died of cancer in 1970. Before he left, there's a compilation of his talks called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, or Heart Mind, Beginner's Mind. And he used the metaphor of an open field. It's like, someone just mentioned that today. Who was it that mentioned the open field? Yeah. You give an open field, you give your mind an open field so that it's like a cow, wanders around and eventually eats some grass and eventually lays down. It doesn't even know it's in prison because the fences are so far away. Those fences represent concepts and ideas that are supposed to protect us, and we have more of them. The more you're identified with the body as being under siege by whatever, by other people, by our social structure, coworkers, the more we want to protect ourselves. So what's being recommended here is not to stop protecting yourself, but rather to sit down, hold still, use the wall, because we're not really putting gumballs in our ears to stop hearing, nor are we going to put something over our eyes to stop seeing, or close everything off so we have this little tiny consciousness world that goes in circles. I'm not saying that's wrong. You may have to do that. So I'm not saying it's incorrect. But when we do that, we tend to feel more, we feel more and more secure. And you can actually get into what is called sometimes called samadhi, or some kind of state of mind. There's something called the jhana states. I don't teach that. I also don't deny it. But I'm not against the jhana states, those states of and I think there's 4 or 6 of them. Who knows? You know about those? Yeah. Is there 6?
There's 8, but I think only 6 are known how to get to.
Well, that sounds like a hype. Well, there's 8, but we don't know how to get to those. Who went there then? Well, somebody who doesn't know how to get there. Well, did they come back and tell us? Yeah, they said you can't get to those. How do you know? Because I tried and couldn't get to it. Then how do you know it's a state? Well, I guess I don't. Well, it's a state. So what we're teaching here, what we're talking about here, what I'm talking about, not out of what I've read, but out of how this looks. How this looks. That's why you're getting fresh bread. And I can't even cook. But you're getting something that's coming right out of this person. And I would say, don't believe it, don't disbelieve it, don't do anything with it. You're here, you're listening, so you might as well give me the benefit of the doubt. And I would say, you don't need to go to something else. Just be genuine. Just stop deceiving yourself. Just be here. You don't need a jhana state. You don't need this state. You don't need any state. A state is an enclosure where just this happens. And I'm also not saying that you may not need to do that. You may not need to go to some kind of a state so you can realize statelessness. This was an early teaching of the Buddha. So what I'm saying or endeavoring to, promote somewhat is just see what this is. And as far as yourself, just see what this is. Look at your own self-deception. See if you have it. See if there's some way in which you're not quite leveling with yourself. There's various ways of doing that. You have a question?
I didn't answer questions yet.
What?
I didn't answer questions yet, so I can wait.
It doesn't matter. I would rather be interrupted. What you say is much more important than what I'm saying. And I'm not just saying that.
Let's say you know you're deceiving yourself. You can see
Yes,
that.
yes.
Then what?
Just continue to look at it. You don't have to stop it. You don't have to fluff it up with excuses or reasons why it's happening. Just look at just bear attention on that. When you see that, just look at that. Nothing lasts. So anytime you just look at something, what you will see is the movement. you'll see it start to change. But if you add to it, it stays there. If you take away from it, it stays there, because it becomes a reference point. It solidifies. It's called fixation. We actually fixate on that with our opinions. We shine our opinion on it, and it just freezes. But if you do nothing with it but look at it, it becomes, it depends. It can become very mirror-like. It can also vanish. There's so many things it can do depending on the structure of what you're referring to there is self-deception. More questions, we can go deeper into that if you have the questions.
How do you know the difference between boredom and self-deception? And what is the difference?
Well, generally, I would have to generalize somewhat because I'm not in your driver's seat, so to speak. But using those concepts, I would say that if you're experiencing something that you call boredom, I call this how it feels to give up on entertainment. Most people don't do that. They want some kind of feedback from something somewhere to fill them up with ideas or feelings, or want to do this, we want to sew, we want to watch TV, we want to lay back, we want to snooze. We want to do anything but just hold very still, which you do for several hours every day. Sit down and let whatever is occurring occur until it stops occurring. And then the boredom, the downside of boredom is what? It's boring. But the upside of boredom, it's actually the path to awakening. More?
So there's some question around that self-deception. Why is it important to see the self-deception if you don't do anything with it?
Because fundamentally there is no self. This is just a teaching concept. There is no solid being anywhere. So there's really nothing that can do any deceiving. But the deception itself is a smokescreen to protect the imaginary identity of a self. And so to look at it and see the self-deception, you keep looking, you keep looking, you keep looking, you keep looking, and then you look some more, and then you look some more, and then slowly or fast or speedily, you begin to not require any credentials from anything. You don't require any compliment, you don't require anything. You just see it, just awareness, just perception only, perception only, perception only. You look at it, you see it, and then you see there is no one there. There is no one here. There isn't any solid being anywhere. And this is called liberation. And what are you liberated from? That's a good start. So, and it may take different forms. It may be a slow wiping out or eradication or vanishing of something, and it may be a pop. It may pop you, depending on the causes and conditions that got you into this human form in the first place. We're here based on just innumerable kinds of things that come together. Look at this. This is such a coincidence. We're all here in the same building at the same time. How the hell do we pull that off? Here we are, and look what you're asking. More?
How do you know you're not, this isn't meant as disrespect?
Of course not. No, you should ask me.
Self-deceiving. Like, how do you know, I'm not saying like, how do you know?
Yeah,
but how do you know you're not?
I didn't say I wasn't. I'm deceiving all the time. So I know about this. That's how I can teach it, because I see self-deception here. That's how I know. It's astonishing to see there's no self that can deceive, so that you see the self-deception. But the self-deception doesn't have to go anywhere, nor does the self have to go anywhere. Once you see it's unreal, it can do whatever it wants. My ego is all over the place, all the time. I mean, it comes and it goes. It's discontinuous, so it doesn't have any. It's a chimera. It's ghost-like. and it's not, I don't mind, it can do whatever it wants. So who is it, what is the I that doesn't mind? There isn't one. And you have to get to the non-existent part before you get to the actual magic, which is it's both there and not there at the same time. That's the thing that's astonishing. It's both real and unreal. It's called non-duality, not two, Advaita. You actually see that everything you look at is you're not separate from. More?
So you said it can, there seems to be something happening between boredom and not caring. I know what you meant by that, like not attaching, and then self-deception. Because you can self-deceive for a very long time, or at least sometimes sitting for 2 or 3 hours, it seems like things come and go really easily. They're not
Yes.
sticky. But then sometimes that turns really quickly into that self-deception.
Yes. What's the problem? Any problem? No problem? Keep doing that. Just return to square one. Just return to beginner's mind. Sit down, hold still, and observe. And do it over and over and over again until, you could say until. It's not actually an until because it's already the case, as Dogen said in the 13th century. As soon as you sit down, hold still, this is the Buddha. As soon as you stop, Buddha nature, just the Buddha nature. It's your birthright. You're not separate from it. You never have been. There's nothing to gain. There's nothing to lose. It's already the case. But if you don't realize it, you, not just you, but anyone will continue to be in some kind of turmoil about what to do and what shouldn't be done, what they're doing, what I'm doing, what should I do, what shouldn't I do? Should I do that? If that's happening to you, I say, if I have your ear, don't do anything. Hold still and experience the feeling of being pulled towards something. Experience the passion, the aggression, the ignorance without embodying that. That doesn't mean you won't feel intense feelings. Sitting down, holding still, looking at a wall is absolutely boring. I don't do it. Boring. I don't want to do it. But you should keep going. Anyone that's listening to me, keep doing this. Keep sitting. Find a wall, find a floor, find a cushion, find a chair. Find a few minutes, hold still. And see the truth. You see what is really true. So not somebody's opinion, not our own opinion. It's not about believing anything or disbelieving. Buddhism is called the middle way. Which, when I first heard that, I thought, well, middle way. So don't go there, go through the middle. I thought that seems kind of wimpy. Shouldn't you decide on what's right and what's wrong? Not too tight, not too loose. More? You have a question? That's all right. That happens all the time. I forgot what the answer was. Yes, sir.
How can I see the not pinkness when the concept of pink is thoroughly laminated to my perception?
Very good. So how can you see the not pinkness? Is you can see the lamination. You've described the conceptual patina or surface that is on the top of that. You look at it. This is something when I teach this class, Open in the Eye Mind, that I talk about looking at something until you just, this is your awareness, it's your visual awareness, your olfactory awareness, your tactile awareness, it's yours. But most people, most of the time, are ignoring all of those unless something comes in and hits you, or something, you smell something, or you eat some popcorn. We don't really have that so much. So we're always up in our mind thinking about everything. The mind is kind of know it all. So when you look at that, it's very possible that would be a good way to practice, to look at that, look at the color, register the color, feel that color, hear that color, switch to another, look at something and hear it. You know, the boundary between the senses is porous. The mind can go anywhere. I can say right now, I'm going to ring this bell. When I do, if I can find the part that hits the bell.
The little one's missing. The little one's missing. You have to use the big one.
Well, this might knock it over.
That's all I got.
Okay. So when I strike the bell, look at the tip of your nose and go to the sense of touch. Just feel your body. Now everybody look up at that color. Look up at what is not pink. And if you can't see it, find something that's pink on that wall behind me. It's not pink. Now when I strike the bell, I want you to see if you can taste that color. Keep looking at it. Now hear that color. Now smell that color. Now taste that color. Now see that color. So did you notice anything happening with the concept of pink as you were doing that?
A lot of other concepts layered on top of that.
You know what I call that? Awareness. That's awareness. It's not about getting rid of anything. It's only about seeing the truth. Seeing, so you can't, there's no way you can deceive yourself. It's kind of aggravating because when you get clear about it, you just notice how nuts you are. The interesting thing about it is when you realize that, you also realize there's no solid being that is that way. And you've been kind of wasting your time pushing on an illusion, trying to get that to stop doing that or modify it this way or get it to do that. If you see it's unreal, you're liberated. You're free. You're liberated. What are you liberated from? You're liberated from the closet or the cocoon, or you're liberated from the strictures or container of your opinions, your ideas, your beliefs, your hopes, your fears. You become fearless. I'm not saying there isn't something scary and that you aren't particularly afraid of it, maybe, but how you work with that is different than, you don't just run away necessarily, although you might. If a bulldozer's coming at you, probably a good idea to get out of the way. But you're very pragmatic. You would be very pragmatic about it. So, but you would not necessarily be fearful of something that is imaginary. You have a question? Yes, sir.
Kind of still thinking about self-deception.
Yes.
So is the only way, or the main way we realize when we're deceiving ourselves is that in sitting somehow, you sit enough at some point, there's kind of an aha moment about whatever theory of self-deception
Is that your question?
might be. Is that how it works?
Probably not.
So how do you work then with self-deception?
Just do the best you can, but don't take your eyes off of it, and use this, be very pragmatic. Use the practice of meditation to keep an eye on yourself. It's not like you're spying. It's not like it's not like some kind of a intrigue. You're actually watching the way you make shit up about others and about yourself, and it's just endless. It's an endless stream, and at I don't think it's a point. I mean, it might be with some people. Sometimes when it's a point, that can create a problem because then we try to cling to the point. I know a few people who have had some kind of aha or samadhi, and they, instead of continuing to go and realize how much work they still have to do, they cling to that idea and want that to be their awakening. If you're clinging to anything, This is called delusion. Go ahead.
Well, it feels like, the way it feels to me is like there's an elephant in the room, and I know there's an elephant in the room, but I don't know where it is.
Yeah. Is that a comment on me? By the way, I pronounce that effluent. Not to correct you or anything, of course.
Not sure what to do with that feeling.
You know, I think you're doing it, James. I think you're already, just by asking that question, you're doing that. Just by asking your question, you're already doing. It's just that you're, to use the metaphor of a mountain, you're just partway up the mountain, and you're having, because it's so much that situation for you or for anyone, it's so much that situation that we get tempted to say, well, maybe I should go this way, go around the mountain. Maybe I should go, this looks like an interesting path here. This is greener. And I don't have to meditate if I do it this way. I can go this way, I can do that, or I can do, and what I'm saying is, we're only using this whole structure, this whole thing, and this whole thing in order to create a structure, a form, so that you will listen to what everything is empty of what you think it is. Things are both real and unreal at the same time. There is no time. Can you hear that? Sound of one hand clapping? That's why in the Zen tradition, they always come up with these corny kind of, what's your name before your parents' birth? And you think, it's kind of insulting. But what you're doing, or anyone, what you're doing is, I just say, just keep doing that. Find the path, get on the path, keep going. You may be on a skateboard, which is hard to go up a hill with a skateboard. You may be on skis, you may be, where is she? Maybe in a kayak, looking for bears. You may be on any kind of a path. There's no right way or wrong way. But if you're in this room and you're listening to me, just keep going. And insofar as you can, now that you're doing this, whether you're at the very beginning of it or you've been doing this for 20, 30 years, just keep going. Don't stop, and don't take anything for granted, and don't settle, and don't fixate. And if you start to fixate on something, that is not it. You can't fixate on what this is, because you're not separate from it. And all you have to do, and it might sound simplistic, is realize what it is. It is not separate, and there's really nothing to gain, because it's already what it is. As my name, Sokuzan, is as it is, mountain. It's a big mountain of nothing. It's nothing. Somebody straightened me up. Further questions on this would be good if you have them. Please, yes.
So if we're on the path up the mountain and we begin to see, but then we think what we see isn't it,
Isn't?
isn't what it should be.
Paraphrase yourself. Paraphrase what you've
Is
said.
it possible to have a realization and dismiss it?
Yeah, you're doing it all the time. You're dismissing reality. You're all, what you're looking for, you're looking at right now. Now, it may have several layers of preconceptions, but what you're looking at, just don't stop. Keep looking at that. Take that to the wall. Take it to a floor. Take it to your screen door. That shouldn't rhyme. I didn't mean that. Take it to your screen door. Take it to take it to your dog's backside. Take it to the trunk of your car. Take it to a stop sign. Take it to the grass in your lawn. Take it to the window. And hold still and look at the preconceptions. You have to see the delusion. You have to see the confusion, and you have to, your awareness, your wisdom mind, your prajna has to burn holes in that. and it can't burn holes in it if you keep adding more layers of asbestos onto it. Well, that can't be. That should be. That shouldn't be. Those shouldn't. That's wrong. That can't be right. Don't do anything with it. Don't come to any conclusion. Don't fixate. And fundamentally, when I say there's no point, there may be points, but they're kind of meaningless. When you realize what this is, then you realize the points you had were just like, I don't know, it's like something tapping you on the shoulder or saying, by the way, this is it. But it's not really like a point. I had a couple of awakening points, but they were many, many years ago. The last one I had was in 1977, is that it? I think 77. And I had quite a few before then. I had them in the 60s, I had them before I started meditating. We all had flashes of insight about different things that happen, but yeah, I don't have those anymore. Whew, glad those are gone. Yes, peace to you too, brother.
So I'm completely self-deceived.
I know that.
So how can I investigate my self-deception if I'm thoroughly and completely sold by myself?
Because, well, you're explaining that, you're telling that, you're saying that, and you're just going to have to work through it. I mean, it's going to show up in all kinds of different ways. The Sangha knows that you're crazy. I know, I've been talking to him about you. But we all are. We all have our craziness or our spiritual, whatever you want to call it, center, or our wisdom mind gets clouded over by various kinds of hope and fear, and we get confused by things, and we start, we were getting pretty clear for a while, and all of a sudden we're like a ship that starts getting barnacles. We start gathering crap, and it doesn't feel very good. It's like gaining weight. It's like your ego's gaining weight by believing in dumb stuff. Yeah, so I think I gave a talk once a couple of years ago. I put your ego on a diet, didn't I? How'd that go over? Didn't it? No, I didn't get famous. Ego diet. So I would say, in your situation, I say just keep sitting. Try to sit as much as you can. Schedule yourself. I say this. I probably said it to everybody that gives me a chance. I say schedule yourself. I had to do that. I did not like to sit. I still don't care to meditate. That's why I don't do it much. Once in a while. But to meditate or do this feels like the same thing. This is just as boring. Not that you're boring. You're fine. But it's not different. But I don't know how else to say it. On the other hand, you should sit as much as you can. Pull yourself, sit now, hold still. I say this over and over, hold very still and watch what continues to move. And you will see the way in which the deception starts to come up and gather momentum. The more you sit, the more you get to see that. And it can manifest in terms of boredom. It can start, boredom is just a form of ignorance, but it needs to be seen rather than filled with enjoyment or filled with something else or filled with success. That's why, and I quoted my teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, many times. I'm going to do it again now because it's such a valuable understanding, is the path to awakening consists of one disappointment after another until the final disappointment, which is awakening itself. It's complete devastation to ego, and it's painful. Until the ego is gone, it's just, ouch, kind of thing. And then, and why do you keep going? Because you have the original inspiration, the original bodhicitta, or the mind of awakening. Perhaps you have the help of a vow that says, I'm going to be with all things. I'm going to save all beings. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this if it kills me. That's powerful. Yes?
Will awareness alone take us to the final goal?
I think so, to use that concept, awareness and the teacher kicking you in the butt. Because, no Not literally, of course, but like we tend to get, I needed that. I needed 2 teachers. My first teacher died, and I thought, phew, I don't have to deal with that anymore. I get to be awakened on my own. Ha ha. Or I should say, ha ha. It was like that. It was kind of, now what do I do? I guess, I've been taught, I'll just keep practicing what I was told, and then I ran into Coben. And that was very, very embarrassing to have, to be confronted with an awakened being. And especially with the preconception that I'd somehow gotten somewhere. I was somehow getting more and more and more awake and more closer and closer to enlightenment. I might even be enlightened already. He helped me a lot. Yes.
Awareness is strengthened by meditation.
Yes.
Are there other things that strengthen awareness?
Yes. Using the conceptual mind in such a way that you don't contribute to the confusion that you're already trying to see through by adding on to it. Ideas about anything that's arising, don't add. Don't subtract. In other words, judge, which is subtracting. And don't shut down, look away, distract yourself into something else. And just, you could say, not to get particularly romantic about it, but you could just flow with that. There's a time when it's not like you have to maintain some kind of beam of awareness on everything. I'm not adding. I'm not subtracting. I'm just.
She would never talk, really.
Huh?
She would never talk.
She would never say anything. No, she needs to talk.
Things would just be like,
She would just sit there and radiate light, like a huge marshmallow.
what's your name?
Oh, I got a great. Yeah, I got your name. You're pretty much done for. Sorry.
Hopefully it's like pudding and marshmallow combined.
Yeah, it's like mushy, shiny goo. We're just going to call you Goo Goo.
That's my nickname for my son.
Goo?
Goo.
Goo Goo. Oh, interesting.
So, does awareness move?
Yes. My awareness right now is in the back of your neck. You can put your awareness on the ceiling. If you do this enough, you actually realize that awareness has no location. It doesn't even belong to anybody. Nobody owns anything. And I'm taking that the other way around because of non-duality. There isn't anything you don't own. There isn't anything that isn't yours. This is yours. I mean, even though somebody else is paying the bills. So it's yours in the sense that you don't, when I was very young, I stole from my mother's purse, and I was just a really bad boy. And but it's because I thought there was something I needed, and I would steal. And then I remember going out. I might spend the money, but I'd also go outside, and other kids, they were really attached to money, and I would throw it away. But I would want to get an audience or a vidience. I would get them there, and here's a 50-cent piece, bing, out into the woods. So what was I trying to do there? Show off? I still don't know.
lessons on impermanence, even at a young age.
No, I was just being self-centered.
It's like Trump throwing paper towels to Puerto Rican.
Yeah, I was like Trump. That's probably where he got the idea. 50 cents worth of paper towels. What else?
When, for instance, someone like yourself is in the room or we're meditating together and awareness appears to be strengthened,
Yeah.
what is that?
I think it's just an indication that it doesn't belong to anyone. I mean, I come into a room that people are meditating. I feel that intensely. My thought patterns, which I don't have a lot anyway, but they just drop. And but it doesn't feel like some kind of accomplishment. It's just the way it is. Sometimes if you're around someone, the thought patterns just settle. Not much comes up. I've had interviews with people where I just looked at somebody for 10 minutes. Varies.
The strengthening of awareness What is that?
I don't know. How's it look to you? You've been doing it for a long time.
It appears to be conditioning. The more you do it, the stronger it gets.
It's kind of how it looks here too. Well, your prior, like I used the idea of if your thinking mind is really strong and developed and logical and evaluating and everything, it gets out in front and fiddles around with things and pushes and buttons and levers and tries to make sure you navigate through this world with some kind of success and a minimum of failure, which is way beyond your say-so. Sometimes we don't realize that until we've done it for 20 or 30 years. But then the awareness, when the awareness starts to lead, starts to come out through strengthening it, using that same metaphor, it starts to come out in front of the thinking. Then the thinking is there, but it's more like a tool rather than something you're using to navigate, figure things out, and be materialistic. When the awareness comes out in front, you begin to see that that there's really nothing to fight with. Really, there's nothing to gain, and there's really nothing to lose. I mean, of course, we're going to lose this body mind, but you're not just this. There isn't anything that you aren't. I don't mean to get fancy about it, but there isn't anything else but this. Like it says on her back of her rock suit. What does it say?
Nothing else.
What? When did I write that on there?
2010.
I thought it was 2009. You sure? Are you usually right? That's what I thought. Yes.
So you can be here, and you can feel that awareness being strengthened, and I get in the car, and I'm like feeling not a lot, which is good. You know, if we're going to use relative terms.
Yes.
I feel pretty sane. Pull in the driveway, get inside the house, and it falls to shit.
Yeah, but see, that's still
Completely.
great, and thank you for bringing that up, because it's still awareness. Nothing is. You're actually aware that something is starting to spin or going to turmoil, and I would say if you take that personally, like there's something you should be doing that you're not doing, that's actually getting sucked as an entity, as a person who can win or lose into that turmoil or into that tilt-a-whirl that goes around. And so that same awareness that's there, just I don't mean to say maintain so much as just see what arises and falls without adding anything extra, no extra commentary. That's difficult, especially when what's rising and falling is yelling at you or accusing you of things.
A dog puking, a kid eating something, 40 things at once.
Yeah.
You're like,
I'll get them aid.
and it kind of brings me back to that first question about self-deception, and then it brings me to this question that I can't quite put my finger on because it keeps going
Try.
around, which is something along the lines of there's almost what's that word? Apathy?
Yeah.
Apathy that appears with just being in it to the people around who are expecting you to spin with them.
Okay.
So then when you're like, Sokuzan, stay with senses, don't spin, and not that you're like really saying this, but
I don't say don't spin.
try to
I just say whatever's happening, don't. I don't even say that. That's extra. What do I say? Just observe what's happening, insofar as you can. And if you get drawn into it, then just watch that. And when someone outside, apparently outside, your children or your husband or anybody outside that is accusing you of anything, you're apathetic or something, just realize that they're labeling you because of their suffering, that they're unhappy, and they can't see what you can see, and what you're in the process of uncovering is your relationship to your family, to the world, to human beings, to life and death. you know, you're actually walking a spiritual path. Just doesn't mean that you're any higher than anybody else. I'm not saying you're better than anyone. It's just that you're looking at things a different way. You could say much deeper maybe, and they're kind of on the surface because that's easier to just blame or accuse. Well, look what you did. You done, you know, you've just went and meditated all day long, and I'm dealing with this and this and this. You know, and then you just come here and seem all apathetic when actually you're there, you're just trying to be with them. So, but I would say that's why it's so difficult until you really see what this is, we get sucked into that vortex of right and wrong and up and down and back and forth and success and failure, and especially if the rest of the world is so absorbed by that kind of thing. If you get near it, it's just difficult. We even have that at the monastery. Occasionally, there's people that are meditating a lot and practicing that. Sometimes that starts to swirl around in there. It just doesn't last very long. Just like our situation here, we had difficulty here, and now it's settled down a little bit. So, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's what happens when you get people who come together, who try to work together, and we have different ideas and opinions about how things should be or shouldn't be. More? Yes, sir.
I keep hearing you say that, you know, we should sit more and more meditation, but if I have the time and ability and, you know, I'm taking care of my body and my responsibilities, is there a point where it's too much?
Meditation?
Yeah.
Probably not. Yeah. And the reason I say probably not is because our life is so full of everything else. For anyone to sit down and just, you know, you've just been sitting for a while here, sit down and just do nothing. The contrast there between, especially not only to ourselves, which is quite a contrast, but also to the rest of the world who will interact with you and tell you things and, you know, why you're doing that, especially if they don't see the value in that or just can't resonate with that. But it has been said, and I'm saying, that the boundary between meditation and non-meditation, or between actual formal meditation and getting up and walking around, that boundary eventually just vanishes. It takes a while. That doesn't mean that I'm not saying, oh, I'm meditating all the time. I don't have to meditate because I'm so stable, or I'm so aware. Even though I am, of course. Further questions? Sir?
Is the painting and things like that, when you're doing things like that, is that a form of meditation?
Painting?
The scrimshaw and, you know, like art and stuff like that?
No. No, that's making art, working on a car, chopping radishes, putting salt on the radishes, and feeding them to your wife. So it can be meditative, of course. I mean, you can be doing something where there seems to be a lot of space around it. Quite often, if you're doing something that has no purpose, which is what art is, has no real pragmatic thing. That's why it's difficult for artists, even really good artists, to make a living doing that. So it's not that it's not meditative. We teach the practice of enso, or a brush and ink awareness practice, is where we sit. We do it very formally and have a structure. People sit here and someone sits in front. We have the brush and the ink, and we go through a very stylized, formal way of holding the brush up, coming down, making a circle, coming up like so, and do something very formal, so that you're doing something where because of the formality and the repetition, you're able to see that form and actually differentiate between the form and the awareness that it takes to contain that form. This is why we chant sutras. This is why we come up and this is just stuff, but it represents aspects of our path that are an example of an image of the Buddha. So you're actually bowing to your own Buddha nature. You're not bowing to that piece of plastic. You're just using that as bowing to your own Buddha nature. You're bowing to your own realization. So awareness is there. Awareness is in the kitchen. Awareness. It's not so much what you do or what arises in the awareness, but just that you're acknowledging the spaciousness that is there anytime you do anything. Yes.
You said you met Koba and you knew you were meeting someone who was awake, or something like that.
I didn't realize it until I looked back on it. At the time, I was just petrified.
So you didn't realize he was awake when you met him. You just sensed
I wasn't sure. I just kept watching him. I wasn't sure.
So now, how do you know he was awake?
Because he helped me. But what he did actually helped me. At the time, it didn't feel like help. It felt like being insulted. I mean, basically, his timing, not that he was timing everything, but his interaction with me was coming out of, the way it looks, was coming out of his deep understanding of where he was and who he was and what this was. He was completely unassuming. He was a completely, if you listen to his Dharma talks, you can hardly hear him. He sounds like feathers hitting together. And they've made his book into somebody who actually says stuff, but if you listen to him, I don't know where those books came from, but somebody did some extreme editing on those, like dipping the feathers in something that would solidify them. Because he didn't make any sense. He still doesn't. That's why we study him. But yeah, it was insulting, which was painful. It's like if you called me up and I hung up on you. So I don't teach the way he teaches. I'm not a Japanese monk. I don't have that kind of charisma. I don't know. He taught in different ways for different people. Anything else?
How about Trungpa? You said that you met somebody who's alive and awake.
Yeah.
Did you know that right away?
Pretty much.
And then
Yeah.
how do you know that? How do you recognize that?
I don't have I don't have anything for it to say other than he was just completely present, and you had trouble thinking just being in the same room with him, and I attributed some of that to just that he was this Tibetan Lama, but he pretty much did what he could to get in the way of that. He had real bushy hair, and he had a golf shirt on. He was smoking cigarettes and drinking sake. So, but when I found that, I thought, this is my teacher. I don't want anybody else. So, but it was reading Cutting Through. That book was, and we still study it, as you know. Reading Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism was helpful. So I wanted to meet him. But he was insulting too. Am I insulting? Ever?
It might feel like it sometimes.
Yeah, sure it will. Further questions? Yes, sir. Mr. Mann.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've wondered the question, but sort of when you get home and you've been driving and everything feels like you've got it all,
Yes.
not even under control, just there it is. All of a sudden you're home, kids and everything else.
Yes.
All happening. So I just think about awareness. Okay, I can put my attention on this, and then I also think about trying not to harm other people. And I just think my personality, the way it's constructed, just where I've gotten, this is my world I was forged in.
Sure.
My personality is harmful, and yell at kids or. So what is the practice for softening those personality traits that are harmful in this setting? Because I can see, part of me can see what it's all about.
Sure.
It's like do it, and feel like, okay, but nonetheless, all I've got is what I've got.
Sure.
It's imperfect. So how do you work with those sharp edges of personality to be less harmful?
Okay. So as you can probably see, I'm very biased. I'm a Buddhist monk, and this is a Buddhist Sangha. And this is, for a short period of time, this is a Buddhist meditation hall or Zendo. And I would say, use those three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, to give you some kind of support for your awareness practice. And then continue to go, and you already have a lot of awareness around that, but you're probably missing the triggers. You see the explosion, but you don't see the trigger. And so what's being said is practice, stretch that awareness, make it so that awareness, when you get up off from the cushion and go back into your post-meditation or everyday life, that the awareness is so strong that it sees the trigger before it pulls, before it actually sets off. And you see that, do nothing with it. Don't try to stop the trigger. Don't assist the trigger, which can happen. Do nothing with it. So I would say, schedule yourself to sit 2 hours a day. If you're serious about you're asking me a question, that's not that much. There are people in this room that sit more than that. So schedule yourself. Like I say to everybody, sit down, get a bell. You get a bell, don't you? Yeah. Sit there. Put a clock or a watch off where you don't have to look at it all the time, and sit there. And then whatever happens in that 2 hours, just receive. Go into all your senses, and are you much of a visual person? So go in and visualize each one of those senses. You could deliberately go in and just turn it. Receive, 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 receive. Sit down and then be a receiver. Whatever happens, that very area that you're describing, this doesn't sound like it's far below the surface the way you describe it, but what you're missing are the triggers themselves, the actual lines that run down to the trigger. So, more awareness practice. Sit down, hold still, all the senses open, look at the wall, watch what occurs. And you've been meditating for how long? Yeah. So ramp that up a little bit if you can, and 2 hours might be difficult, but look at the whole 24 hours and be fairly pragmatic about it and say, yeah, I only have 22 hours left to live the rest of my life. How am I going to get my laundry done? Well, you have a wife, don't you? I knew I'd get that. She has a husband who does the laundry. I've done the laundry. I've been married many times, and one of my marriages, I did all the laundry and paid all the bills. So I know I can do it. But it's just hard. Doing the laundry, especially when you know that you can't put that water has to be cooler, because if you put that in with that, then that color will bleed into yeah. So I wasn't too successful, but. Huh?
That's one of my triggers.
Pink shirts, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not pink. It's white. It's white. I know it was. It was white. That would be a good name for a Dharma talk. It was white. You do that. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the question. Further questions? Yes.
I'm curious what you would name as an example of a trigger.
There's probably lots of things, but maybe somebody jumping the gun on you. You're doing such and such, and you're doing fine, and you're aware of what you're doing, and then somebody is observing you and comes in and intercepts what you're fine with and starts to point out something that maybe you hadn't seen. You weren't looking. You were going in there, and you were settling for what awareness was happening. Like, I feel fine, everything's going fine. But then someone who who has your frequency comes in and said, "How about that? How about that?" And then that, if the awareness is strong, it just accommodates that. And you would say, I see what you mean. I'll take a look at that. Thank you for your help. And then it would probably fade, or else they might insist, you're being very apathetic about this. You say, well, I'm trying to work with what you said. Let me see if I can work. Give me some time to work with that. You know, like someone might say, even though you're extending yourself and you're being as open as you can and as helpful as you can, somebody comes in and points out a particular area where you're ignoring what they're trying to say, or they're something. It'll catch you on something. And that will, if that is not included, if we don't realize what's happening, that can set off something that you've been shutting down on or ignoring, some area, and then it can blow up. Maybe. I mean, everyone's style is different. Sometimes there's a blow up of anger, which was my issue, and then sometimes that happens and we go into some kind of despair about it, about how bad we are, and they're right. I'm a miserable person. I'm never going to do things right. Yes.
How can it be though? It seems like sometimes it's just like noise, you know, like it's not someone saying like very clearly like,
Yeah.
oh, you, I mean, the example, and I know it was an example, but seemed very much like someone was pointing something
Yes.
at you, but sometimes it's so
Yeah.
just nothing, like, you know, it's just the level of noise or the way
Yeah.
someone leaves their shoes or
Yes.
something so average.
Yeah.
That just all of a sudden I'm such a horrible person because I lost it over
Yeah.
over something that I'm like,
Yeah.
how is
I-
that a trigger?
Well, I walk into this monastery probably every day. We go in there almost every day, and I always see all kinds of things out of place and wrong, where somebody's done something wrong, or there's something off. Munya has the same thing. She comes in, somebody didn't empty the dishwasher. This is irritating to her. I'm not going to use yours, huh?
The laundry.
Yeah, somebody does their laundry, instead of getting the laundry out, they leave it there, and then you've got a bunch of soggy stuff that you need to move to the dryer, or the stuff is in the dryer, and it's a family, Sangha. There's a community of 6 people who live there, and they all use that. And so those kind of things.
Those are triggers.
They're triggers, and like everybody's meditating, and then someone outside is standing right under the window and having a conversation with somebody else, and they're temple residents. They know better than to chatter outside of a window, because it just disturbs the issues that people are already looking at as their crazy mind, and now they've got the crazy mind that is there is outside. So you could think of that as, well, that's helpful. It's really helping me work with my triggers. So it's very important for a meditator, someone who's working with this, to see that anything that occurs is an opportunity for you to bring it to the path. Everything that occurs, the most disrespectful person, thing, place, situation, is notice what's happening with you, bring it to the path, bring it into that open field of awareness. Allow it to be there. Allow the negativity to be there. If you're always at war trying to get rid of the negativity and not have a reaction, then that's just a fighting with things. It's like fighting with wind. It's already happening. It's karma that's already on its way. It has a trajectory. It's headed for something, and just awareness. Further questions? Yes.
What about triggers that catch you off guard?
Give me an example.
Well, things are going seemingly fine, and then there's some kind of interaction that becomes explosive, like the mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah. What about them?
For me, there's it seems to be it feels like I have a split second to make a choice of falling into that hole and staying there for a couple days, or else what I see you do, which is mostly lose. You cave, you immediately apologize, sorry, and there's some resistance that I feel with me that won't go there.
You want to hear it? Are you ready to hear it?
I'm ready.
Put others before yourself. Put others' concern, feelings, emotions, opinions, ideas before yourself. Take care of everybody. And I mean, that may involve apologizing, and it may not. But yeah, you're around me enough. You see that happen, but it's not something I do. It's something I am. I'm not have a strategy to do that, but the practice might involve some kind of strategy to endeavor or try to do that. Try to, when things arise, especially something that happens over and over again, is to take care of people. Be as His Holiness Dalai Lama said, his religion is kindness. How do you do that? In the midst of all this anger and turmoil and people fighting and arguing and pulling, fighting over teddy bears. So if you have warfare here, then that warfare gets triggered, and then it gets projected out on the warfare that's out here. And then we try to stop that warfare, or complain about that warfare, or blame that warfare, passion, aggression, ignorance. Or we get out of there, or we go, have a beer and go to the basement. Not you, of course, because you'd have a beer and stay upstairs and sew or something. Not anymore. You have. I remember you going down to the basement for hours at a time and meditating. That was a rough passage. But you didn't give up. Further questions? So yes, lose the war. If you feel warfare, lose. Really have nothing to lose. There isn't anything to lose. Other people might think so. And that also doesn't mean that you stay there and let somebody beat on you about something. We're not going the other extreme, because that's also self-centered about I'm just going to lose. I just lose. When that happens, I just lose. You never should particularly add on to what you're doing by some kind of merit badge you're getting because you're such a losing person. That's the other kind of self-centeredness. It's like I'm sitting here and Unyo says she sees me lose, and I kind of feel like she noticed that I lose. It doesn't harm your identity or your spirit or your consciousness at all to cave or to lose. Further questions? Good idea. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyro.